Well, who doesn't love a good Christmas story, right? Everyone loves Christmas. Well, most people do anyway. And today in our reading, we have an incredible Christmas story. And it's in the book of Matthew, first chapter, first book of the New Testament, Matthew 1. And I'm sure in your daily reading, if you've read it already, and you see Matthew chapter 1, you're like, how in the world is this a Christmas story? There's a whole bunch of names. I can't even pronounce half of them. You know, it's like, man, what does that have to do with Christmas? And I'm going to let you know. Whenever you read the book of Matthew, chapter 1, first thing we need to realize is Matthew is writing to a Jewish audience. And he's about to write about the Savior, the Messiah. And of course, when you're talking to Jewish people, if you are going to talk about the Messiah, two things have to be incredibly clear. The Messiah has to be related to Abraham and has to be related to King David. Otherwise, they aren't going to listen as to you talking about a Messiah. So before he even gets into anything really about Jesus or any of his cool stories or anything that he did in his writings, he starts with a genealogy to prove to his Jewish audience that Jesus, the Messiah that he's going to be talking about, is related to Abraham and is related to David. And it's a beautiful part of the Christmas story because he goes through, starts all the way back with Abraham and traces the lineage or the family tree of Jesus all the way up to Jesus. And it is so powerful, especially when you look at some of the things he points out along the way. It's like, whoa, hold on, Matt. Why in the world would you put that in there? In fact, he even puts women in there who they don't even need to be named in a genealogy. Genealogies are typically just the men. But Matthew goes out of his way to point out some of the shady, people who are related to Jesus and some of their greatest faults. And it's like, man, if you're making a case for the Messiah, aren't you just going to put the good stuff? Well, Matthew doesn't, because as you read, one of the first people you see is Judah, and it says Judah and Tamar. And of course, if you don't know that story, that's in Genesis 38. Crazy story. We won't go into it right now, but that's a crazy story. And it's like, whoa, hold on. Why would you point out Tamar and Judah and what they did in the story of this Messiah? Why would you do that? He talks about Rahab, and Rahab isn't even Jewish. So now Jesus, this Messiah, doesn't even have a pure Jewish bloodline. You find about her in Joshua chapter 2. Then he talks about Ruth. And it's like, whoa, hold on. Why do you keep bringing up women? You don't need to bring up women. And Ruth, you can find her in the book of, Ruth. That one's pretty easy. And then you finally get to King David, and he points out one of probably the greatest fault in King David's life, because it says this. He said, David was the follower of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. Why do you put that in there, Matthew? Because we all know probably the story of David and Bathsheba and the fact that he ended up killing her husband just so he could have her as his wife. It is the greatest fault in the life of King David that all these Jewish guys would have loved so much. Why do you point out his faults? Well, that's the point of Christmas. That's the reason Jesus came. So as we read the genealogy, and I know sometimes genealogies can be boring, but if you dig into who some of these people are, we realize that Jesus didn't just come for sinners. Jesus came from sinners. And Jesus came from people who could win awards for their sin. But it's the beauty of Christmas. It's the beauty and the love of the story of Jesus, is the fact that he didn't just come for sinners, he came from sinners. He came from people just like you and just like me. It's a powerful story. So I hope as you dig into Matthew 1, you go back and you try and pull out some of these cool stories and learn about some of the people in his genealogy, because not all of them have a beautiful past. Some of them are pretty shady, but it's the point of the Christmas story. Thanks for watching.